Hello there. Nice to have you with me again today, and thanks for joining me. Dr. Teach Me to Parent. We're drawing from my book on that title, Dr. Teach Me to Parent, a great book, and today I'm going to draw on one of the chapters that I think is a very critical chapter, especially in today and age in which we live, in the last couple of weeks in which we've lived. And that is the topic of violence in the home. The home is no place for violence. We're going to take a look at that issue and how you and your home can be violent free. And you need to do it in a very deliberate and intentional way. So that's our topic today, and I invite you to join me and pick up your cup of coffee and join me today as we focus on that topic as our first issue today. Then we're going to be joined by Dr. Michael Regier from Visalia, psychologist, who's written a nice book on marriage, and we're going to discuss his book together. So that'll be a great segment for you as well. Now, to put this in perspective, let me just give you a quote that I'd like to refer to today, and that is, you really don't know how you feel until you pick up a pen and start writing. You see, we have feelings, and we have to somehow access those feelings and understand them and better understand them. But we can best understand them if we try to write our feelings out, to express our feelings in written form. We can speak them, but that's not the same thing as writing them, because when you write, you got to think it through and you have to deliberate a little bit. So writing is a very important way for you to learn the process of understanding yourself, understanding your feelings, and getting in touch with them. But writing a book is one way. Doing a journal, is another way. Writing a note of gratitude, a thank you note to somebody. Those are all kind of ways in which we express feelings. So I encourage you to make sure your feelings are put on paper, and you'll understand yourself much better. Now, let's take a look at our topic on violence in the home. Now, violence in the home is a very critical issue today. Violence on the street is a critical issue. The amount of child abuse that's occurring in our homes and in our communities seems to be increasing in the last year. So we've seen an increase in violence in the home. Children are being punished much more severely than has been the case. But we're seeing violence of that nature. We're seeing drugs come into our home, and that's creating violence, and that's creating a sense of violence in our home. We have lots of ways in which we allow violence to come into our home and reside there when it shouldn't at all. So what I'd like to do is to kind of just give you some ways in which you can look at your home and see if it's a violent home or if it's free of violence. And if you have a violent home, then how can you undo that? How can you remove the signs of violence in your home and return your home to a home of peace or a home of tranquility, a home of compassion, caring, empathy, feeling good towards each other, helping each other, being cooperative, being supportive, rather than being hurtful and separating. Violence separates us. Violence hurts. Violence creates hurt. Violence just brings people apart and divides people on issues. And feelings often are very separated and very hurt at the same time. And we develop relationships within our home, within our families that are negative and that are hurtful and go on for years like that, perhaps. So violence, we got to take a look at that. And we got to remove it from our home, because we don't want to have violence in a home where it just creates competitiveness. We want a home that creates cooperation, you see. There's different ways in which homes can be operated, and we don't want the violence as the basis, of our home life. Now, let me just give you a couple points on how you might do this. Number one, you need to survey your home. You go from room to room to room to room in your home, and then you look for signs of violence. It might be a picture on the wall. It might be a pair of scissors that's sitting out, and maybe they should be put into a drawer, you see. It may be a knife that lays around. It may be some form of violence in the form of art, that you might have in your home or on the wall or someplace. But if you have any sign of violence, remove it. Remove it from your home, because you don't want to live in a home in which the message of violence comes at you through objects and through pictures and through the different ways in which we communicate a attitude or a value. And violence is one of those, obviously. So, survey your home and then remove any object that would be violent oriented, okay? Now, number 2, you need to ban from your home any objects and any person that portrays an attitude of violence in how they dress and how they talk, their lifestyle, their behavior patterns. If somebody comes into your home and is violent in nature and violent in talk and violent in gesture, that doesn't belong in your home. You need to remove that person or tell that person to stop that kind of behavior in your home. This is not an acceptable behavior for your home. So don't let violence come into your home. Ban all forms of violence and anybody that brings violence into your home in any form. It can be dress, it can be tattoos, it can be lots of different ways in which we portray violence. And you don't want that in your home. You see? Now, in regards to tattoo, it's not necessarily the tattoo itself, but the tattoos that have sharp edges and that have sharp points and have messages of violence, that's not to be brought into a home. That's not to be allowed in a home because that creates a message of violence and it stirs up that kind of violent feeling within those that are in the home. So be careful when it comes to that kind of behavior, okay? Now, forbid from your home words of violence. Forbid from your home gestures of violence. Forbid from your home accusations and talk and phrases that are of violent in nature. See, we don't want people using cuss words that are of violent in nature in your home. You don't want that. You don't want people who are using gestures one towards another that's violent in nature, that's hostile, that's angry, in nature. You don't want that kind of thing in your home. So remove that don't allow that kind of behavior. Don't allow that kind of talk, that gesturing, that messaging to take place in your home. That is not the place for it. And your home should be violent free. And those are just some of the ways in which people bring violence into it. How you look and how the gestures and the way you talk. Remove those as much as you possibly can. And then have zero tolerance for any kind of violence. Have zero tolerance for violence. If people yell at each other, people put each other down, call names, cuss at each other, be derogatory towards each other, making comments and remarks that are negative and that are hurtful towards each other, that's violent behavior. Stop it. Alter it. Change it. Remove it. Other behaviors are more important. Other behaviors can be encouraged and engaged in. There needs to be ways to communicate in a nonviolent way. You cannot have people yell at each other and put down each other and be derogatory to each other in your home. That's violent behavior. And when you allow that kind of violent behavior, you encourage your children, you encourage anybody in your home to begin to think violently and act violently when the opportunity is there. So be careful in what you allow. Zero tolerance for any kind of violent act is obviously what's important. And then child discipline must be nonviolent. Spanking is a violent form of discipline. There are multitudes of other ways to discipline children. The majority of the way, and the good ways of doing it, is sit down with a child in a chair, sit down eye to eye level, and have a little conversation. Have a little reasoning, have a little talk, and help a child understand why not to do certain behaviors and what behaviors to do instead. See, punishment only tells a child what not to do. It never tells a child what to do. So what you want to make sure that you do is when you punish a child, you let the child know that that behavior is unacceptable, but you don't have to do it in a violent way. You can do it in a nonviolent way. But you also want a child to understand what is acceptable, what is the preferred way of speaking or talking or behaving, you see. So that's the object of discipline in the home. So you can do it through reasoning, you can do it through talk, you can do it through just encouraging each other and role playing or time out, putting a child in time out for a while and cooling off so that you can have a reasonable conversation with the child after that. So you want to make sure that your discipline of the child is nonviolent in nature. There's all ways in which to do that. And then make sure that your acts of violence and aggression should be resolved. There are times when we do slip and we do act in a violent way. We act in a non-kind way. We act in a manner that is hurtful to somebody else. I mean, those things do happen. But you see, they need to be resolved. They need to be resolved through forgiveness. They need to be resolved through reconciliation. There's a time when you just say, okay, I'm sorry that those things happened. We don't do those kind of things. Now let's reconcile. It's like when little sister and brother have to kiss and make up, you say. That's reconciliation, you see. That's forgiveness. And we do that at all ages. We go through an act of forgiveness. We ask for forgiveness. We receive forgiveness. We accept forgiveness. And then we reconcile and we move on with life. But we don't repeat those behavior patterns again. That's the thing about reconciliation. It's a matter of committing to not behave in that way again in the future. So let your slips, let your mistakes, let your errors, let your times of violence or even mild violence in the home be dealt with through forgiveness and through reconciliation. Now, you also have to make sure that humor in the home. We all have humor. We all have our own levels of humor. But humor is not to be of violent nature. Picking on people, a race, a culture, a group of people of some kind, making derogatory remarks about them. That's violent behavior. That's violent talk, you see. That leads to violent behavior. So you want to make sure that in your humor that we eliminate those statements and those jokes against somebody that's going to embarrass somebody or hurt somebody or make their feelings very unkind and very unpleasant. So you want to make sure that all humor is enjoyable, but not violent in nature, not hostile in nature. That's what's important there, you see. And then prohibit acts and statements of revenge. You know, we have a tendency in our culture to get back, to get even. That's called revenge. And when you have revenge, that means you're acting in a violent way to somebody who has been unkind or unpleasant to you. Whether it was my mistake or an error or just incidentally or they really meant it and deliberately hurt you. But when we get hurt, we have that tendency to want to get back at. And then we say things like, I'll get even with you someday. Or, don't you ever do that to me again, or I will. You say. Those are violent statements, you say. So when we have those statements that are getting even, getting back at, such as just you wait, we are acting in a violent way and we're promoting violence in our home. So it's the kind of way we talk, the kind of way we deal with hurt, the kind of way we deal with mistakes and errors in the home. It's not through revenge. We don't get together. We don't come together. We don't lift our lives in a higher level of plane when we act out of revenge and hurt and trying to hurt somebody who has hurt us or hurt somebody even more who has hurt us, you say. That's revenge, and we don't do that. Stop that kind of behavior in the home. Don't let revenge prevail in your home. That's the message there. And then lastly, limit game playing. That's violent in nature. Now, kids game. There are a number of kids who game. There are a number of kids who use social media. Okay? We've had a lot of research on that. And when your kids game, and those games are violent in nature, there's a tendency to set up a deal where a child is ready to act in violence if he is approached in violence. If somebody acts in violence towards him, he's more likely than to respond in violence if he's a gamer who uses games of violence. Now, there are a lot of games that are nonviolent. So it isn't just the fact that you use a little iPad or something to play a game, but it's the violent games that you want to eliminate and remove from your child's repertoire of gameplay. Same thing in social media. You got to monitor that. Social media can be violent too. The talk, the gesturing, the comments. There's lots of ways in which in social media violence can be portrayed and can be communicated. So we want to be careful that we don't let that act of violence enter into our children's world, whether they are social media kids or they're game playing kids. You see? Monitor that kind of behavior. Monitor what they're doing. Monitor whom they're playing with. Monitor to whom they're speaking, with whom they're speaking. And make sure that you are on top of that so that if you see violence, you can act on it. You can stop it. You can deal with it and eliminate that. Teach your children to communicate in nonviolent ways, no matter what the emotion is, no matter what the feeling is. And you don't need to do it in this kind of violent way that separates and hurts and perpetrates hurt, within the home. So anyway, here we are. We're a home. We're a family. And there's a tendency for families to allow a lot of different kind of behaviors to take place. But what I'm saying is, let's take those violent behaviors and carve them out of your home life. Carve them out of your family life. Carve them out of your children's life. Just carve them out of the life in your home that when you allow friends to come in. Don't let friends bring in violence into your home. In the same way, you don't want your children to have violence and bring that into the home. So any form of violence, you have to be on top of that. So if maybe, today, take a little time and just survey your home and look around and see what kind of violence there is and do something about it. Check it. Take care of it. Remove it. Listen for violence. Look for signs of violence. Identify who brings violence into the home. Who promotes it? How do they promote it? And when that's the case, you want to make sure that you deal with that in a very effective way. Now, we're going to just take one last look at this issue of violence in the home. Your home, in contrast, should be a home of peace, a home of compassion, a home of caring, a home of empathy, a home of cooperation, not a home of competitiveness, not a home of put-downs, not a home of one-upmanship. We want to make sure that we have a home that is compatible and soft and loving and caring and supportive and thoughtful one towards the other. So you always have to look at it in the context of the contrast. Violent homes, yes, we need to stop those. We need to correct those. We need to change those kind of homes. But we need to build in those homes that sense of compassion and caring and love and empathy. That's the difference. So it's your job as a parent to do it. You set the pace. You set the tone. You set the example. You lead, and it will happen. Okay, nice to have you with me today, and this is our first segment, so just take a break for a moment. Make sure your coffee is hot, and come on back in a few minutes, and we'll pick up our interview, okay?
When you need a dentist who has a passion for superior aesthetics and comfort, you need Dr. Christopher Wong with Cedar North Dental. Call 559-432-4948 or visit cedarnorthdental.com. Fresno Rescue Mission's Rescue the Children program is a protected, secure environment providing emergency and long-term services to women at risk, abused, homeless, previously incarcerated, and women with children. The community provides women and their children a place to get away from destructive lifestyles, offering a place to heal, learn, and grow. Give to the Fresno Rescue Mission today.
Do you need a locksmith? Layman's Lock and Safe Service and Repair is available for you. 559-228-1805.
Sometimes good intentions hurt rather than help. For just $1.76 per meal, the Fresno Rescue Mission offers more than food. We offer hope. Please donate today.
Choosing a Medicare plan can be difficult and frustrating. Susan Hatch can guide you through the Medicare maze and help find the right plan for you. Susan helps people understand the confusing and drastic changes that occur every year in Medicare. Susan will only recommend plans that will protect your assets and allow you to continue to see your personal doctor. As a 100% independent agent, Susan is not controlled by any particular insurance company to steer a person onto any one particular plan. Susan was awarded the #1 Medicare supplement agent in California. Look for Susan's Medicare question and answers every Monday in the Fresno Bee. Call Susan at 559-307-2287 and visit MedicareToday.net.
Gained a lot, learned it weren't for the knowledge that I had gained from the classes at PCC, I probably wouldn't be the mom I am today. See, there it goes.
I would love you to meet my son, Aaron. My situation was very difficult. I didn't know how my life was going to turn out.
We graduated in June 2010 and we got married in July. And through family, the Pregnancy Care Center changed our lives.
The Pregnancy Care Center was a huge, vital part in helping me walk through that pregnancy, in educating me and loving on me during that time.
Satellite television transforming the Middle East through hope in Jesus Christ. Sat7USA.org.
This segment is brought to you by Mike Briggs Properties. The recession's over. It's now safe to sell your home. Call Mike Briggs Properties.
This program is brought to you in part by Avante Health. Sound mental health is an important foundation to productive living. Happy employees are productive employees. Employers have the option to carve out the mental health component of their general medical plan to Avante, a fully insured specialty health plan focusing on mental health, substance abuse, and employee assistance programs. Avante offers full service benefit management from eligibility determinations to in-house claims processing. Avante can handle all aspects of your benefit management needs. Avante Health provides EAP mental health services to the employees and families of local and national companies, businesses, and governmental agencies. For more information, call Avante Health 800-498-9055. 800-498-9055. Visit AvanteHealth.com. Dr. Alan Hedberg is proud to have Avante Health as a sponsor of this program.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Okay, nice to have you back with me today as we talk on the next segment of Dr. Teach Me to Parent. We're going to just change our emphasis a little bit and look at the issue of marriage for the next couple segments here now this morning. And we have Dr. Michael Regier, clinical psychologist from Visalia, California, being with me. And Dr. Regier and his wife just completed a book that they wrote entitled Emotional Connection. And it has a very basic concept in the restoration of marriage relationships and the rebuilding of relationships of a marriage. So Dr. Regier is going to kind of tell about the story of this book and how it came to be and what the message is and what the message is for us, in the book itself. So it's Emotional Connection. It's on your screen, and you're encouraged to pick it up. And Dr. Regier will tell you kind of where you can get a copy of this book. Dr. Regier, you wrote in this book, you and your wife actually, and you start out in the introduction with a statement that I think is very critical, and that is all couples want their marriage to succeed. Now, we know that that's true. I mean, you get married for the hope that obviously will succeed. But you know what? Children hope that their parents' marriage will succeed. That's just as important. What's your comment on that?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. So, in fact, children may want their parents' marriage to succeed even more than the parents want the marriage to succeed.
I think that's true. I think when I've talked to kids, they almost think, you know, even if parents don't appreciate their marriage, the children want them to stay in the marriage for the child's sake.
That's right. Absolutely. Their whole sense of security is based on the couple and how secure the couple is. So if the couple isn't secure, then the child isn't going to feel secure either.
You know, you went on to write another statement that just puts your book into perspective anyway. Couples also need to understand what mature love looks like. Mature love is a secure love. You know, sometimes we can't achieve something because we don't know what it is. We don't know what we're trying to achieve. We don't know what it looks like at the end. You know, it's like a piece of pottery. You know, you start out with a lump of clay, but you have to have a picture of what that's going to look like at the end, because otherwise you're just going to make a mush out of it. And I think it's the same with marriage. We need to know what mature marriages look like when they come to that point in time. How do you help couples get an appreciation for that?
Well, Alan, unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there about what love should look like. You can't stand in the supermarket line without seeing a magazine and about, you know, it's celebrating somebody's second or third Hollywood romance. I mean, the culture is very confused when it comes to love relationships. So the objective of this book was to indeed help readers understand the science of lifetime love. We have so much new research. We have so much new understanding of what makes love healthy over the lifespan. And unfortunately, we are so uneducated in this area. Most couples, most people will spend more time learning how to drive than they will learning how to be in a lifetime relationship.
They spend more time
and parenting as well.
Learn how to be an excellent parent.
Yeah. So think about it, Alan. If you were going to get in a car and you were told there's a 50% chance you're going to have an accident, wouldn't you spend a little bit of time trying to figure out how not to have an accident? And that's what most people are signing up for in a marriage. And there's this blindness. People say, yeah, I want that. And of course, I'm going to succeed at that. And of course, I'm going to be committed. But all of those of courses don't help at all in terms of predicting, who's going to succeed and who's going to fail. Yeah. So this book really is an attempt to help couples see the big picture of what makes relationships succeed and fail.
You make a point about that big picture issue, and that is you contrast, if you will, threats, to a marriage as compared to things which secure a marriage or bring it together and hold it together and make that marriage sink, together.
That's right. That's right.
How do you deal with threats? What are you talking about there when you mention threats?
Well, the threats of a relationship have to do with the very beginnings of our capacity to make a secure connection in a relationship. So when I say the big picture, I'm literally talking about a lifespan issue. How do we come into this world, and how do we learn how to connect even in infancy, and how does that experience with connection follow us into our adult love relationships and make us more secure or insecure from the very beginning. So what we're talking about here is something called attachment science. And the attachment science has gotten really good at predicting who's going to be insecure and secure in adult life based on how they grew up. So that's one threat right there. Not understanding yourself, not understanding how you're going to be overly anxious in a relationship, or how you're going to actually avoid connection in a relationship based on the way you grew up.
There that you also talked about in your book, and that is our marriages are often influenced by our childhood.
That's right.
You know, the nature in which we were raised as children has
That's
a
right.
great impact upon how we do marriage and how we approach marriage.
Yeah.
Is that a threat, or is it always a threat, or just can it be a threat for some?
Well, it's always a reality, and it can be a threat or not a threat if we understand it. And the really good news is, if we understand it, we can actually rewire our brains by learning how to emotionally connect in our adult relationships. But if we're unconscious about our insecurities, we're probably going to play out the same kinds of insecurities that our parents had in raising us. So it's just going to get passed down from one generation to the other.
Yeah. And you know, we have to protect against that. We have to guard against that. And,
that's right.
You know, there seems to me kind of a critical point where you have to face these kind of childhood issues that are going to go on and either be helpful to your marriage or hurtful to your marriage. You know, it's kind of like during teenage years or somehow during the pre-marriage time, that those kind of issues have to be really addressed.
Well, they really do. And I mean, ideally, you know, for couples thinking about getting married, or even singles that want a lifetime love relationship, that's probably the best place to start, because, you know, when you're single and you're thinking, well, gosh, how do I select somebody? How do I start from the very beginning, even of my dating relationship, to create patterns that will be successful for a lifetime? That's the place to learn it.
Do you advocate some kind of a pre-marriage counseling? I didn't notice it in your book if you talked about that, but do you advocate for that? Is that a helpful thing, or do couples really need something different than that?
Well, I do recommend premarital education, sometimes counseling. I think a lot of what has been done in that area historically has been fairly behavioral, and what I mean by that is, you know, couples are taught to, well, kind of hear each other's love languages, do the kinds of things for each other that the other person likes. Of course, going on dates, kind of, they talk about finances, they talk about issues of parenting. I mean, all of these kinds of behavioral things are great, but the title of our book, Emotional Connection, really gets at the root of where relationships fail, and it's not usually because of behaviors. I mean, there's this myth out there that, you know, kind of issues of money and sex are what make and break relationships. Well, there's something far deeper than that, and that's how, you know, we either stay or don't stay what we call attached or emotionally connected in the relationship. Once we detach, the relationship begins to die, and these other issues become huge issues that couples argue about. But underneath of that is a disconnection. And if we didn't learn how to connect with other people when we're younger, we're probably going to have a hard time connecting in our adult relationship.
You have a very special meaning to that word connect.
Right.
I mean, we just think, you know, you just put two things together.
Right.
But you seem to have a very unique and a very special definition of it, or way in which it operates within a relationship, and a marital relationship particularly.
Yeah. Well, we think of connection in terms of what's been studied a lot in attachment science, and it has to do with being accessible, responsive, and engaged. Are you accessible to me? Are you available to me when I have an emotional need? See, this is what's really critical. In our culture, we've learned to downplay the importance of emotion. We've we don't teach our kids, and we certainly don't teach either as adults, that if we care about each other, we're going to care about what the other person feels. If I'm in emotional pain and I'm expressing that to you, and you don't care about the fact that I'm in emotional pain, guess what? I don't think you love me, right?
That's right. That's the natural conclusion, I guess.
So you've got to, there's that empathic component that there's been so much research now about, and that's essentially what creates this big concept of emotional intelligence that we know so much about now in the business world. It also exists vitally in a marriage relationship, that if I have an emotional pain or need or aspiration, I want you to be accessible to me. I want you to respond to that need and really engage with it. And the engagement part is, I want to see that my emotion affects your emotions. Because if it doesn't, then again, I don't know that you care about me. And if you don't care about me, I'm going to stop expressing my emotions to you. And when I stop expressing my emotions to you, the relationship will begin to die.
What you meant by emotional bond, you have a kind of a unique definition there of just not only emotion, but emotional bond, which means apparently the coming together of two emotions. And
right.
You use the word kind of, you're talking to each other's emotions.
Right. You're talking to each other's emotions. And what we know now from neuroscience is there's a part of the brain that contains something called mirror neurons. And we have this capacity to pick up on what the other person is feeling without the other person even speaking. So what's going on with each other emotionally is vital. And it's not just the words, it's actually what we are each feeling that affects the other person and either creates closeness in the relationship or distance.
If a couple is in that dilemma, that they're not feeling the closeness, the bonding is not occurring, not growing, not developing, but they're feeling this kind of separation, that's danger point. That's when we're at a danger point. That's when we're at a point of, you got to better do something.
It's a danger point, and unfortunately, what most couples do, I call it my more of the same principle. Instead of addressing the disconnection, what they will do is whatever makes them feel better. So if they're kind of going after career success, they're going to work harder. If drinking alcohol makes them feel better, they're going to drink more. They're going to do whatever externally they need to do to feel better rather than facing the source of the emotional disconnection in the relationship.
It's really a dilemma for a couple, isn't it? It's kind of like doing the easy thing. Do the thing that I know what to do and I know how to do it and I do it all the time. Just do more of it.
Just do more
But
of
it doesn't put the emotional bond together of the marriage. In fact, it probably threatens it that much more.
It doesn't. And so what we're trying to do in the book, and the book is a highly engaging story, and that's combined with kind of a scientific explanation. But the book is for everybody, and the book is designed to help couples see themselves in this story that we tell about a couple named Ben and Claire. And Ben and Claire's story is really all of our stories. It's all of our stories about, kind of idealizing getting married and what it'll be like, how wonderful it'll be like to get married. And unfortunately, not spending enough time nurturing the bond and growing the bond, and then finding disconnection. And I would say most couples go through something like this. Some recover, some don't. And what this book is designed to do is to help couples see what's happening in their relationship and rescue it before it falls apart.
The book was kind of like a therapy session, back and forth between the couple and you as a therapist. And
that's right.
So you have kind of a dialogue, and it shows what therapy. It's kind of a little insight into what therapy actually is. But what you mentioned on one page in there, the fact that couples that go into marital counseling of some form, there's about a 75% chance that marriage is going to be improved. The bond is going to be improved. The bond is going to be much closer. That's a pretty good investment of time and effort and energy and resources.
Yeah. So I practice a kind of couples therapy called emotionally focused therapy, developed by someone named Sue Johnson and also Les Greenberg. And this form of therapy is based on science. It's an empirically approved method of therapy by the American Psychological Association. And so those numbers I'm giving you are actually based on outcome research with this particular form of therapy. And it's different than a lot of other kinds of therapies in that it really, like the name implies, focuses on the emotional exchange between the couple. And we don't even focus that much on content. We stay out of those issues. And what we're looking at a process level is, how are people countering back and forth? I'm expressing an emotion. How is that emotion heard? And how is it empathically responded to? And when couples learn how to do that, the issues pretty much take care of themselves. But it does take a fair amount of effort and focus and dedication when couples don't know how to do this to learn how to do it.
Counseling to their therapy.
That's right. That's right.
They'll produce, but you got to be dedicated to go through the process, and it's a tough one.
It is a tough process.
But it's a win-win situation too.
It is. But kind of like you were implying earlier when we opened up the program, if couples don't learn how to do this, they're most likely going to produce emotionally insecure offspring that are going to repeat the pattern in their own adult relationships. So the investment...
oh, boy, tough going that is.
It's not just for them. It's generational, Alan.
So we're going to take a little break here for a few moments, see some commercials, get your coffee, and then we're going to come back with Dr. Regier for the last segment and look at this book a little bit more carefully as to where the emotional bond can really be created and strengthened in a marriage. So there's really a hope and a future for a marriage, even though it may not look so hopeful and positive at this point in time now. But stick with us. We'll be back in just a few moments. Okay?
CentralValleyTalk.com. Opportunity isn't always given a door to knock on, so we built one. The door to our kids' futures is often crowded by temptation and misdirection, making it difficult for them to reach their full potential. But once they enter that door, our club door, inside is a place of hope and opportunity. The second home for the nearly 4 million kids we serve every year after school and in the summer. Inside our doors, youth development professionals and mentors provide the guidance, support, and encouragement needed for every kid and teen in an enriching and safe environment, no matter their circumstances. Boys and Girls Club set the standard as the #1 advocate for youth during the out-of-school time. We assure success is within reach for all kids and teens in America, with club members on track to graduate from high school with a plan for the future, demonstrating good character and living a healthy lifestyle. We're leading America's youth, fostering success well beyond the basketball court through hundreds of programs, from robotics to the culinary arts, providing unlimited opportunities for those seeking. This hope and opportunity builds character, creates leaders, and helps all kids define their future. Ensuring young people find their passions, reach for their dreams, and achieve their full potential. Much can be found inside our 4,000 doors nationwide and on military installations around the world. Boys and Girls Clubs is the opportunity for all kids, and our doors are open. Great futures start here.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Okay, nice to have you back with me, and today we have changed our format just a little bit, and we're talking with a Dr. Michael Regier from Visalia, California, who's written a great book on marriage entitled Emotional Connection. It's on the screen there in front of you, and we're discussing the book as to how it came about and the content of this particular book and what it means for marriages, but also what it means for parents of children and their marriage. So if it's a great book, I would recommend that you pick it up. Where can it be purchased, Dr. Regier?
Yeah, Amazon.com. Just type in my name, Michael Regier, and Regier, an emotional connection, and the book should come up for you.
Okay, that's a great book, and I recommend that you pick it up. If you're in a marriage, if you're in a remarriage situation, this is a great book. It'll make a lot of sense to you. But if you're in the edge now of becoming married, and at that juncture in your life, you need to pick up this book as well. This is a great book to review. It'll make more sense maybe after you're married a little bit, but it will certainly make you better prepared for entering into the marriage relationship. So it's really for you. So pick up the book and avail yourself of it. I recommend it to you. Now, let me ask you this, Dr. Regier. We were talking before the break regarding the kind of the bond of a marriage and how a marriage really must form that mature, strong bond to prevail. And obviously couples want their marriage to succeed, and children want their parents' marriages to succeed.
Yep.
But people come into a marriage with trauma. They've had trauma in their life. They've had difficulties, high levels of stress, prolonged levels of stress, sometimes in their early childhood, sometimes in their later years of a child, or just prior to the marriage, or early in the marriage even, for that matter. Trauma enters into the life, and it has a huge impact upon a marriage. Yep. How do you use that in your therapy program with couples?
Yeah, there's two types of trauma. There's developmental trauma, which happens when people are young, and sometimes that's different kinds of abuse that people go through. And that affects their ability to trust in the adult relationship. And then there are things that happen to us when we're adults. Sometimes affairs, sometimes betrayals, sometimes somebody gets in a car accident. So there's different kinds of things that can traumatize us when we're adults as well. Interestingly enough, couples therapy is one of the best ways to work through trauma issues. What we're needing when we're traumatized is to know that somebody else is there for us when we're hypervigilant and we have all of this trauma anxiety. We reach, as human beings, we reach for a connection at that point in time. When our partner is there for us to tell us it's going to be okay, we learn how to emotionally regulate a lot faster. And there's a lot of brain science which has proven this now, that human beings are actually wired for emotional co-regulation, to be able to regulate their emotions with the help of another human being. So when that other human being is there for us, we can heal from that trauma much more quickly.
That person is not there. obviously the trauma becomes exacerbated and becomes much worse.
That's right. And so part of what we teach couples is that if you're with somebody that's traumatized, it's really important for you to hear them. If you think their trauma is silly, if you think they just kind of need to buck up, then they're probably going to get worse rather than better. If you can understand that the symptoms that they're showing are a result of the trauma and have compassion for them, they'll probably heal much more quickly.
I see the connection now that you're trying to make in this book, and that is if a person has been traumatized and people do not take that seriously, you can't form a marital bond.
Right.
In fact, that marital bond is a disconnect.
Yeah.
But if you go through a trauma, either a previous trauma or one that you've going through here recently, and you get support from your partner, you get support from your mate, and there's a bond that is built then in that support system, so the marriage becomes much stronger, much greater, much more mature if there's support. So a trauma could be a very critical issue then.
It is a critical issue. In developmental trauma, if you've been abused when you're young, I mean, there's this fear that you carry into your adult life that when you get close to somebody that you love, that they're going to abuse you again, right? So those fears have to be talked through, and when they have an experience of being loved, even in the middle of these fears, that old emotional memory gets healed, and people stop having the same kinds of fears. So it's a phenomenal thing to watch this happen. And I always tell my couples, in couples therapy, we heal present backward. We don't focus on the past. We just create a loving bond in the present, and it takes care of the past.
Say that again. If you focus on the present,
yes.
that will have a healing effect upon previous experiences.
Yes. So if couples learn how to emotionally bond in the present, it heals past emotional memory, and we don't even have to keep going over it over and over again. What we're all looking for is a new experience of love in the here and now, and that's what this work does.
You know, a new love kind of an experience that this book kind of implies here, that, you know, two people have had a previous relationship and now come together and form a new relationship.
Right.
And you put it in the context like a little bit of an addiction.
Yes.
You make that reference, and it's not an addiction, but there's a model there. There's an example there. What did you mean by that?
Well, it can actually become addictive, and part of what the book is designed to do is to help couples understand the difference between new love emotion and secure love emotion. And our brains are wired to produce large amounts of dopamine in any new love relationship. Dopamine acts a lot like cocaine. There's this excitability, this heightened kind of euphoria where you cannot stop thinking about the other person. That is not mature love. In fact, the brain adapts to that in any relationship, and in about a year to year and a half into any relationship, that begins to wear off. Now, a lot of the popular magazines, whatever, would tell you, well, then they've fallen out of love. It's not true at all. They're just getting ready to love at that point. And at that point, the loving has to do with, I'm here for you. I'm emotionally available to you. And that generates a different kind of chemistry called oxytocin, which is the bonding hormones. And the bonding hormones are what mothers have, parents have, fathers too, for their children. It's this feeling of security, serenity. The world is a safe place. And I think our culture is in a lot of trouble because we're not producing enough of those hormones, and we're going after these excitable new love hormones, which just leave us empty over and over again.
There's a healing process, though, isn't there, in a relationship? I mean, people come with traumas, they come with bad experiences in childhood. They have this sense, this fear, being alone or being empty or not having my life fulfilled. And there's that great trepidation that enters into everybody's thinking in a marriage. And then you speak about how much healing can apply to this, and the process of healing that applies to this. How do you help a couple heal?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, Alan. We all of us who are humans and even remotely in touch with our emotions are so invested in having a successful long-term love relationship. It's really the ground of being. It's what defines us. It's why when the World Trade Center was going down and people were putting in their last phone calls, what they wanted to do is just tell people that they loved them. I mean, those were the last words that people had, right? So this is vital for all of us. I'm just reading the biography of Albert Einstein and just how desperate he was to have a deep and secure love relationship, and how he badly failed at it. And, here's one of the smartest guys in history, right? So people fail at this, even though they're really smart. So this book is designed, again, to help people learn how to see how to heal. And it's so simple, it's almost ridiculous. It has to do with compassion, with empathy, with hearing each other's emotions and being there for each other emotionally. Most people don't learn how to do that in their homes. And you talked about violence earlier in the show. And I believe that a lot of violence in our culture is due to insecure attachment, where people's emotions are just spinning internally, and that turns into anger as a secondary emotion, and they act out on it. So I honestly believe that this solution to secure adult relationships is vital for the health of our families and of our culture.
Though, Dr. Regier, is that we get so involved in our life, doing life,
That's right.
Our careers and our education and our social relationships and things beyond, that we just don't take that time that is required for the healing to take place, or for the bonding, to occur.
Yeah.
You're talking about an investment of time, certainly, but an investment of emotion, an investment of thought, an investment of concern and consideration for each other, and step away a little bit from all these external demands of career and education.
In the book, we talk about the difference of being committed to commitment and committed to connection, right? And I think most people commit to commitment when they say their vows, I'm going to stay with you through thick and thin, and then, of course, they don't, because it blows up, and they never even understand why. So what we're talking about here is being committed to connection, and also a concept that I call making your primary primary. There's one relationship. We are created to pair bond as human beings. And, anthropologists, neuroscientists now are verifying that we are a pair bonding species, and that we co-regulate emotionally. Our health is better, our psychology is better, there's less anxiety, there's less depression when we're securely emotionally attached. A world
that gives the message of independence, of just going it alone and doing your own thing and having it your way.
Yeah, and even in our profession, Alan, I mean, historically, psychology has been based on individual psychology, and the idea that, individuals need to get healthy before they can be in a healthy relationship. And it's just not true. We have this saying in EFT, we find ourselves in the arms of another. And that has everything to do with our individual identity gets shaped, molded, and becomes secure and loving in the context of a loving relationship. We don't do that alone.
And I think we try to do it alone, and that's kind of where we are off the track.
That's right.
Into this cultural message of somehow be strong and be independent and be your own person and do your own thing. And I mean, that message is powerful. And we buy into it.
We buy into it.
It's a lie.
individualism pretty much defines Western culture. Yeah.
And that's what you're saying. I liked your quote. You know, we find each other in the arms of each other. We find ourselves in the arms of another.
We find ourselves. We find our own identity. We develop strong individual identity when we know we're loved, right?
Yeah.
How can we become strong as individuals without knowing we're loved? It's impossible.
Well, I think we have to kind of rethink what marriage is. We have to rethink what it takes to be married.
Right.
I mean, really what the value of marriage is and why we get married and what we can derive from it and what it will do for us and do for each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a profound part of our life, but I think we give very little attention to it.
Well, there's a concept in the Bible, and I know people come from different perspectives, but it's called becoming one flesh. And it's so true biologically and neurologically when we look at the new research. We actually begin to reflect each other's psychology in a relationship. If our partner is anxious and depressed, we're going to start to feel worse. Our immune systems function better when we're connected. And so not making our primary relationship primary defeats us at so many levels. And then we think, oh, that's okay. I'm going to put this, I'm going to get married and it'll come around. We'll get, we'll have time for each other at some point. So you put the connection on hold. And usually what we find is that then parents invest most of their energy in getting their kids to soccer matches, blah, blah, blah. That's all good at some level, but they're not spending time with each other connecting. And then the kids leave for college, and then there's this huge emotional void that was never filled up. And they look at each other and they say, who are you? And I don't even feel close to you, so why should we stay together? And we often get a blow up at that point. Or we get an affair earlier in the relationship, and people don't intend to have affairs most of the time, but they do. And there's just all kinds of problems related to
the failure to form that bond to start with.
That's right.
Anyway, we've had a good chat today. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to I have a quote for the day to finish, but I'm going to skip that and go to your quote. I think you gave us the best quote. We find ourselves in the arms of another.
That's right.
And, that's our spouse. Our children, let me put that into the context of children. Children find themselves in the arms of their parents. The arms of the mother, the arms of the father, the arms of the grandparents, the arms of the aunts and uncle, the extended family. I mean, the arms are large, they're big, they're stretched out. But we find ourselves in the context of that kind of loving, caring, accepting, warm relationship.
That's right.
Final word.
Final word, I can't recommend getting the book enough. I've had therapists say it explains therapy to me, and I've had clients say it explains my life. And I really believe that this is a vital read. And I wouldn't say that unless I had gotten the feedback, because I wasn't sure until we started getting the feedback. So it's well worth
great book.
The investment of time.
Emotional Connection. Go to Amazon.com, and I assume BarnesandNoble.com as well.
That's right.
But pick it up in the bookstore, and it'd be a great book for you to read. And read it now as you enter into the fall part of our year. Anyway, nice to have you with us today, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Hey there, world. I'd like to introduce you to someone really special and really cool. This is my mom. My mom is an amazing person. She is a writer. She is a newly transplanted Texan. She is a woman of faith, and she loves 80s music. She also is a person with a very rare genetic muscular disorder called Pompe disease.
Pompe disease is a terminal, progressive illness. It's a genetic enzyme deficiency which ultimately leads to the destruction of your skeletal muscles. Those are the muscles that control how you move, your arms, your legs, and your torso. When your jaw or esophageal muscles are affected, You can no longer eat and require a feeding tube. When your diaphragm is impacted, you can't breathe on your own any longer and require a trach ventilator. When your legs are impacted, you will no longer be able to walk without assistance. You can lose bladder and bowel control. It affects children and adults, and eventually it kills you. It is rare, but it's real.
Now we're lucky. My mom's still able to walk, though she uses a cane to get around most of the time. She's still able to breathe unassisted, but she can't go upstairs, and she needs some kind of assistance to get up from a seated position, like if she's sitting in a chair. She has to examine every activity ahead of time to know if there are things like handicap parking, accessible buildings, and even functional bathrooms. All of her activities depend heavily on the weather. A windy day can be just as dangerous as an icy one. She jokes that you can tell what kind of day she's having by whether she can lift her arms high enough to do her hair. And she recently moved into a one-story house specifically with the idea that she's one day going to need a wheelchair to get around. Those are the kind of things she has as everyday concerns. Her normal everyday fears are things like dropping her keys or falling in public and not being able to get up. That actually happened a couple of years ago. She fell and fractured her pelvis because she was unable to break her fall.
I receive an enzyme replacement therapy every 2 weeks for life. It's a 6-hour IV. It helps slow the progression of the disease, but it is not a cure. And it costs about $100,000 every time you sit in the chair. Insurance takes care of most of that if you're lucky, but not everyone is, and the expenses add up very quickly. Things like wheelchairs, accessible vehicles, special housing, travel costs to medical conferences, doctor's appointments, and clinical trials. Luckily, there is a group that helps families with Pompe handle these costs. The United Pompe Foundation is a group connecting funds with real people who need help. This was founded by a father whose son has Pompe disease, and they could not find the resources that they needed. They assist patients and their families with medical costs and other expenses that they need to survive day to day. Every little bit helps.
There are a lot of things in life that we really take for granted, and sometimes the scariest things in the world are the things that you can't see. So today we're asking for you to help us shed a little light on a rare and scary disease. Please share this video with your friends, your family, strangers, anybody that you come across. Education is a big thing. It makes a big difference. And another way to make a really huge difference in someone's life is to go check out the United Pompe Foundation. Their website is in this video description. Click on it, check it out, and go ahead and donate some money if you're able to. Again, this is an organization giving real help to real people who are amazing and need it, like my mom. I love her, and thank you so much for helping us out. Thank you so much.
CentralValleyTalk.com